So, recommended in my YouTube feed was a video by Dr. Paul Saladino, MD, who is one of the carnivore doctors. And it was actually on what he eats in a day. And I'm going to get into this. I wanted to start, actually what's funny is the reason I think it was suggested to me is I've been watching a lot of Dr. Shawn Baker, who is another doctor that promotes a carnivore diet, and I don't promote a carnivore diet. The reason I've been watching Shawn Baker, and I do want to give a shout out to Dr. Shawn Baker for doing the responsible thing and talking about the unspeakable thing that shan't be spoken of, which I can't do because YouTube doesn't like when I speak about the unspeakable thing that shan't be spoken of. But Dr. Baker is doing a really good service, I think, to humanity with the videos that he's making dealing with a lot of the current events that shan't be spoken of. And he mentioned me. He didn't mention me by name, but he mentioned me as a vegan in his comments section that was encouraging people to, stand up. And I figured I owed him the same thing, but at the time I was banned on YouTube for speaking of the unspeakable thing that shan't be spoken of. And I think Dr. Baker is doing the right thing as a medical professional. I don't agree with him on diet. I don't agree with him on nutrition. I do agree with him on standing up for patients' rights. I think that he's doing the right thing by standing up for patients' rights. And he like me, believes that a doctor's responsibility is to the patient, not to the status quo or anything like that. And he's right. And that's what I wanted to start with, is I want to give a shout out to Dr. Shawn Baker. Thank you, Dr. Baker, for doing what you do in response to the current events. Of course, I disagree with you on nutrition, but I really do appreciate what you're doing for humanity and in particular the United States citizenry. Now, for Dr. Paul Saladino. So I got a video suggested with what he eats in a day, which contains fruit and honey. Now, honey, I can understand honey on a carnivore diet. First, I want to start with this. When I first saw the carnivore diet, I actually thought it was a spoof on vegans. I thought it was, and that actually might be how it started, was to spoof vegans. And, the video, and I'll leave it in the description, if meat eaters acted like vegans. And I actually thought that it was a bunch of people punking vegans. I really did, because I didn't think anyone could really be this insane to try and eat an all-meat diet. And that's a lot of the carnivore dieters like to say, well, there's no research on a carnivore diet, because nobody thought anybody was crazy enough to eat a completely meat diet. Nobody thought that, ever. Okay? That's why there's no research. There's a lot of research on ketogenic diets. And what's funny is what Dr. Saladino recommends, which amazed me, is the consumption of fruit, which he considers to be the least toxic of the plant foods. Now, I've recently made a video about fructose and hepatic shock and how a high fruit diet can be very bad for you. Not fruit in general, you can have some fruit, but you can't have a fruit-centered diet. And I will admit that Dr. Saladino does not eat a fruit-centered diet, but he does eat a considerable amount of fruit, and he does take a considerable amount of glucose in the form of honey, literally admitting to eating honey by the spoonful, okay? The spoonful. Now, honey is concentrated glucose. What do you think that does to your blood sugar? My mother had type 1 diabetes. When her sugar would drop, we would give her honey, because honey is glucose. It is an animal-derived sugar that bees use as their primary fuel source, but in case anybody's wondering, a human is not a bee. And I'm actually very fond of bees. I personally use, and this is why I try not to consider myself, erroneously, I try not to consider myself a vegan, because I'm not a vegan. I am an ethical vegetarian. I follow a 100% plant-based diet, but some of the supplements I have do contain bovine and porcine gelatin, because I can't afford the fancy vegan supplements. And I do use honey, especially raw, local honey, for medicinal reasons. And I use honey for medicinal reasons, which is rare. It's exceedingly rare that I use honey. But I don't eat honey by the spoonful. Okay? Now, if you look at Dr. Saladino's diet that he promotes on his website, it is basically the induction phase of the Atkins diet. Okay? You have a lot of low sugar, low carbohydrate vegetables with meats. Okay? The video that he was promoting is a lot of relatively high sugar fruits with meats and eating honey by the spoonful. The spoonful. Okay, that would be like eating taking a sugar bowl and eating spoonfuls of sugar. Yes, I know glucose is processed slightly different than sucrose, blah, 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 blah. That's not the frickin' point. The point is, as a medical doctor, Dr. Saladino should understand the detrimental effects that eating large amounts of sugar, glucose, sucrose, fructose, whatever. A high sugar diet is not something that's healthy, okay? And he should understand that as a medical doctor, but he's a psychiatrist. And there is an interview with him on the Doctors, and I posted both the interview with him on the Doctors and his response to his interview on the Doctors. I think I'm very fair in dealing with diet. I think I'm very fair with dealing with the health aspects of diet. I think I'm very fair in admitting that the reason that I am a 100% plant-based dieter is for ethical reasons. Okay, I think that that's fair. I think that I project what I'm saying very fairly. I don't misrepresent anything. When I ran a weight management group, I promoted the Atkins diet and the Zone diet to help people lose weight. I didn't promote a vegan diet because I understood that people can't most people can't do a vegan diet. In fact, I don't know one person in my personal life that's a vegan. Not one. Only me, and I'm 100% plant-based. I still, like I said, I take supplements that contain porcine and bovine gelatin. So I wouldn't even be considered a vegetarian by many people. But the facts are the facts, and I also use honey medicinally. So my point is I do not know one single vegan in my personal life, aside me, who's a 100% plant-based eater. I don't meet the criteria of a vegan because there are certain ethical criteria that I don't meet to be a vegan. Vegan is not a diet either. A vegan is a strict vegetarian that also adheres to key ethical considerations like not wearing leather, not wearing fur, trying not to participate in animal testing by buying only things that aren't tested on animals, things like that. That's not me. Okay, so I think I'm very fair in how I express these things, but I think that these carnivore dieters, this is the thing, it's not just Dr. Saladino. And people know my views on psychiatry. I've left some links in the description and to corroborate my views on psychiatry. And I'm not going to make this an anti-psychiatry video, although a lot could be said for Dr. Saladino's love of eating testicles, as he put. That probably should be looked into quite a bit further. Maybe he should see a psychoanalyst to find out why he desires to eat testicles so much. A little disturbing to me personally. I think there might be something going on below the surface there, like maybe, I don't know, some Jeffrey Dahmer stuff. But the thing is, it's not just Dr. Saladino. If you look at Frank Tufano, and Frank Tufano, I'll be honest, I'm gaining respect for Frank Tufano for finally altering his diet and finally adding natural whole foods into his diet and basically practicing just a all-round whole food diet. He's not even paleo. But with Dr. Saladino, what Dr. Saladino is doing is he's basically eating like a paleo Atkins diet, I guess is what you would call it. And he's misrepresenting this as a carnivore diet. A carnivore is now, some people have changed the definition of carnivore, the zoological definition, but that's not the original definition of carnivore. A carnivore is an animal that feeds principally on flesh. Now, some people are saying an animal that feeds principally or predominantly on flesh. That is a newer definition, and that is an inaccurate definition. A dog is not a carnivore. A dog is an omnivore. If you don't believe me, look at the fact that dogs will eat vegetables. Dogs can actually be vegan and thrive. A cat can't be. A cat is an oblate predator, an oblate carnivore. I think I'm saying that correctly. But my cats, they cannot eat vegetables. Why? Because their bodies can't absorb the vegetable matter because they are carnivores. Okay? So that's why I can't, in good conscience, put my cats on a vegan diet. It's not going to work. And I did promise to get into that unnatural vegan and how she's saying that the only reason your cats aren't vegan is because, it's you, and that if you supplement your cat's diet with taurine, they're fine. That's not true, because a cat cannot digest vegetable protein. And in fact, soy is one of the reasons they believe that some cats may have developed hyperthyroidism, like my one cat has, and I have to medicate her for that. So my point is these people with their crazy ideas, okay, whether they're vegans or carnivores, these crazy ideas are not accurate ideas. And what I see from Dr. Saladino's diet, number one, is great inconsistencies from what's on the website and what's on YouTube. On the website, he's promoting essentially a ketogenic diet. And I've left menus. You can read the menus of the Atkins diet, the ketogenic diet, which is given to epileptic children, and just plain ketogenic diets. And the paleo diet, a low-carb version of the paleo diet, because if people remember, the paleo diet is not actually a low-carb diet. But what Dr. Saladino promotes on his website is different than what he promotes on YouTube, where he's promoting eating honey by the spoonful, which is severely unhealthy, and he's promoting the eating of relatively high-sugar fruits, and claiming that they're the least toxic of the plant foods, when fruit is probably the most toxic of the plant foods because of the high amounts of fructose. And as a medical doctor, he should know these things, and he should be responsible in what he's promoting, and I don't believe he is being responsible in what he's promoting. Now, I'm a personal trainer, not anymore, I'm no longer registered and what have you, but I am a trained personal trainer. I do understand nutrition. Clearly, Mr. Saladino or Dr. Saladino does not, and Dr. Saladino being a psychiatrist, to me, a lot of psychiatry is plagued by charlatanism. It's plagued by mysticism and voodoo. And I worked with psychiatrists, and the psychiatrists that I worked with were good people that I believe they believed they were acting in the best interests of their patients, but they had such a heavy cognitive dissonance, that they could not see that their clients, their patients, my clients, their patients, were becoming less and less and less functioning, more and more and more withdrawn, less and less and less verbal, less and less and less capable of meeting what's called ADLs, activities of daily living. The psychiatrists only saw the patients in the office. They would hammer them with medications, okay? And the result from what I saw in the field from going to these people's homes and taking these people into the communities is over the course of months or years, they became less and less and less functional, less and less and less cognitively capable, less mentally healthy, more withdrawn, more psychotic. That is what I saw. That is what I saw as the results of these medications. I'm not a doctor. I'm not telling you that I'm not saying that's the truth. I'm saying that's what I observed as a mental health worker in the field, working with people with mental health issues that were heavily medicated by psychiatrists. And the psychiatrists, I do not doubt this. Some of the psychiatrists I'm still friends with, they were good people, okay? Good people that wanted what was best for their patients. But they have and had such severe cognitive dissonance that they actually thought these people were getting better, told them they were getting better when they were getting more and more and more mentally and emotionally sick. And I mean, and they didn't like that when I was putting that in my notes, but it was the truth. There was, and that I believe that heavy use of psychiatric medication is the primary reason that people that are mildly mentally ill, maybe a light depression or something like that from the loss of a loved one, but that's my theory, is that the heavy use of medication, because remember, back in the day when somebody had a psychotic episode came and a psychotic episode went. It was very rare that people had long-standing psychosis or long-standing delusional thinking. But now with the advent of antipsychotic medication, there's people that spend their whole lives, 50, 60, 70 years, in a psychotic state. That's not consistent with what we knew about schizophrenia and about other forms of mental illness that have delusional and psychotic episodes. It's not what we knew. What we knew originally was people had episodes of psychosis, and then they stopped having episodes of psychosis. And then after medication became the norm, you have people with long-standing psychosis for years and years and years and years and years and years on end, with very little remission of the psychosis, ever, if ever. Okay, I've worked with people in long-standing psychotic states for their whole lives, people in their 60s that were psychotic their whole life because they were what? Well, according to me, from what I observed, they were extremely heavily medicated by psychiatrists like Dr. Saladino that suffer from severe cognitive dissonance in what their treatments are. And I think that's the same thing as Dr. Saladino. I think that he's one of these people that thinks it's, masculine to eat meat and all this other crap. And I think that he has I think if anybody needs psychoanalysis, I think it's Dr. Saladino. I think that a lot of his views on diet are based on his own inferiority complex and things of that nature. I think that's a lot of these carnivore dieters. I think a lot of them have a severe inferiority complex and they need to dominate something, so they choose, but they lack the strength to dominate anything besides something that was killed by somebody else, something that was mutilated by somebody else, something that was harmed by somebody else. They don't have it in them to do it. And he's also talking about the Hunza, not the Hunza, is the Hudzia, one of the African tribes, the Hun. And the thing is, he's blatantly lying about the stuff, and he's talking about how these African tribesmen go out and they're eating like honeycomb. Big deal. Big deal. There's no proof that these people have some kind of deep knowledge of nutrition. Of course, they have a more highly nutrient-dense diet than the average American. I'm going to do a video in defense of the USDA diet. And the fact that the reason that people are fat and unhealthy is not because they're following the USDA diet, it's because they're following the standard American diet. Okay, the standard American diet does not meet government recommendations of a healthy diet. It meets government recommendations of a very, 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 very bad diet. And I think that if people would simply just follow the recommendations of the USDA, you would see people's health transform very quickly. That's all for this video. Please follow the links in the description. Again, shout out to Dr. Baker for doing his duty as a doctor and doing his duty to the American citizenry. I really appreciate it, Dr. Baker. I don't know if you watch my videos, but if you do, props to you, sir.